about this city is it never lands on earth. It just comes down from heaven. And so they speculate that it'll be like the moon. It'll just orbit the earth. Well, I think that that's silly. Because again, this isn't meant to be literal. This is a symbolic image of the church. The bride of the Lamb. Jesus isn't getting married to a building. He's getting married to us. And this is its symbol. It is what? Composed of all of the faithful from both the Old and the New Covenant. From Israel, tribes of Israel, and the apostles, the church. Do you see that? That's what this means. Don't get hung up on the literalness. You miss the point. Okay? Now, the foundation of the wall of the city were adorned with every jewel: jasper, sapphire, agate, emerald, onyx, carnelian, chrysolite, beryl, topaz, chrysoprase, jasper, amethyst. What are these? Precious stones. So that's nice, dear. What does this have to do with anything? Well, if you look on your outline, I'm on the other side, section E. These precious stones are very similar to the ones worn by the high priest. Exodus 39. Exodus 39. These are the vestments of the high priest. By the way, I don't have very many of these, but I have 2 extra outlines if someone does not have an outline. Actually, I lied. I have 4. If anyone needs an outline, I keep referring to this. If you do not have one, here, please take one. And if you don't have one, if you email me, I'll bring you one next week. Okay? Or I'll just email you the outline itself. So either way you get it. All right? So we're in verses 18 through 20, these precious stones. Exodus 39, remember from Exodus 25 virtually to the end of the book, it's all about how to build the tabernacle. How to build the Ark of the Covenant, how to build the altar of incense, how to build the brazen altar, how to everything. It's just pages and pages and pages of architecture, directions, and designs. Well, in Exodus 39, he talks about these are the vestments for the priesthood. Now, let's see here. So he talks about making this vestment, and without going into all of this, he made the breastplate. The high priests wore this breastplate on them, and they had these stones, precious stones that were on them. Now look at this. He made the breastplate in skilled work, like the work of the ephod, of gold, of blue, purple, and crimson yarn, of finely twisted linen. It was square. The breastplate was made double, a span in length and a span in width when doubled. A span is this much, the distance from here to here. This is a hand's length. This is considered a span. Okay, so it was this big. Okay, this big. It was worn right here on the high priest. I'll give you a picture in just a moment. Now look at this. Set in 4 rows: carnelian, chrysolite, emerald, turquoise, sapphire, moonstone, jasper, agate, amethyst. Do these sound familiar?
Yeah.
These are all part of the New Jerusalem. These are the precious stones that were worn by the high priest.
Also by the bride, right?
Huh?
Also by the bride is dressed in all.
Yes, these are the jewels that the bride is wearing, but she's wearing, if you will, the vestments of the high priest. Isn't that something? So let me get a picture. Oh, I know. There we go. Images. There we are. Here's a good one.
Yeah.
Come back. Come to me. There we go. Oh, Pinterest. Good
Not
shot.
now.
All right, let me just do this. You see this? That's what I'm talking about. This is that breastplate I'm talking about. Okay, and it's a span. It's about this big. It would cover, this big. Okay, made of gold, and it has all these jewels that I just mentioned. These are the same jewels that are described in the New Jerusalem. And the New Jerusalem is us. Okay? It's us. The bride. Okay? So this is no mere coincidence. Okay? Because we are the priestly people of God. We are to do what Israel was supposed to do. Israel, all of Israel, was initially charged with being the priests to the world. Now they failed in that, and only the Levites got to be the priests to Israel. But the original goal was that all of Israel was to be priests to the world. They were to mediate the blessings of God through them to everyone else. But because they failed in that task because of sin, it was only given to the Levites. They were the only, of all the 12 tribes, they were the only ones faithful to Moses. That's why they were given that charge. And how do I know that? Remember the golden calf? Remember when they were calfing it up after Moses went up on the mountain? Well, when Moses came back, he was furious, right? And he said to the people, look, you're either going to follow God or you're not. Who's on the Lord's side?
The Levites.
No one said anything except the Levite tribe, which is why we wear the cap. I'm just kidding. It has nothing to do with it. So then Moses charged them. He said, go through the camp and kill all the ones that were idolatry. And because of their zeal for the faithfulness to Moses, they were given the charge of being the priestly people of God. Now I've got news for you, brothers and sisters. We are that priestly people again. All of us. We are charged with mediating God to a dying world. You're like, where are you getting this, Chip? You're making it up. Just don't believe me unless you see it in the scriptures, huh, Seth? Just don't believe a word I say. I like picking on Seth. I don't see him too often.
We believe it's not just, it's just.
This is 1 Peter chapter 2. But you are a chosen race. A what?
A royal priesthood.
A what?
A royal priesthood.
You are a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's own people, in order that you might proclaim the mighty acts of him who called you out of darkness and into his marvelous light. You got it? So it's no wonder in this image of Revelation that we are dressed with the high priest's garments, with this breastplate, with the same jewels, because we are God's priestly people. And by the way, this same injunction was given to Israel when they were brought out of Egypt. Same words. You have seen what I did to the Egyptians and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Boy, there's a good statement on what God has done for you and I also. God has brought you to himself, just like he brought Israel out of Egypt to himself. Now watch. Now therefore, if you will obey my voice, and keep the covenant, you shall be my treasured possession out of all the peoples of the earth. For all the earth is mine. But you shall be for me a what?
Priestly kingdom and a holy nation.
And a holy nation. Isn't that what Peter said describes us? We are a royal priesthood. It's the same words that God said to Israel when he brought them out of Egypt. Same words. You know why they're the same? I'll tell you why. Because it's God's covenant relationship that we are to be his priestly kings on the earth. Because that was Adam's responsibility. Remember Adam and Eve? What did God give them charge? He says, I give you what over the world? Dominion. Who rules? What kind of people rule? Kings. God made Adam and Eve king and queen of the world. Do you understand that? And you know what they decided to do? Disobey. All they had to do was obey God, and they would have kept their place. Guess what God tells Israel to do? Obey my voice and keep my covenant. And guess what? You will be that same people that Adam and Eve once were. You know why? The whole earth is mine. He created it. God can do whatever he wants. This is breaking news, I know. But brace yourself. God can do whatever he wants. Amen. Thank you. And he's given Israel this great opportunity, yes, to be what Adam used to be before the fall. And all they had to do was obey his voice and keep the covenant. What did they do instead? Capped it up. They sinned. Guess what God is charging the church to do? Obey his voice and keep his covenant. And guess what we will be? The priestly kings and queens of the earth. Because all the earth is mine. Go back to Peter. You are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's own people. This is about us. And what are we to do? The same thing that Israel was charged to do. Obey his voice and keep the covenant. What does that mean, keep the covenant? Stay faithful to your marriage vows? What marriage vows? Your baptismal promises? Why do you think we renew our vows every Easter? It's like renewing your wedding vows. Do you ever think of it that way? I hope so, because that's exactly what it is. You know, people that have been married for, a couple of decades or so, they get their marriage vows renewed. They redo a ceremony or something, and they have, it's that idea. It doesn't make them any more married, but it's a nice way to say, you know what, I'm sticking around here, kiddo. I'm not going anywhere, right? In the same way, every year, we renew our marriage vows. Technically, we do it every Sunday. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. Right? When we recite that, that's in essence our marriage vows, because that is the creed, the belief that we stand by and proclaim. Because those are the wedding vows that we repeat at the Easter service. Right? Do you believe in God? I do. Do you reject Satan and all of his works? I do. Do you reject his idle promises? I do. Notice we say I do, I do, I do. Where do you hear that also?
Wedding
weddings.
Matrimony.
You get the connection here that this is about a wedding? That we're in a marriage? It's also no wonder that the devil is attacking marriage and family more than ever in our day and age. Because this is the foundational image, symbol, sacrament that describes the relationship between God and his people. And if the devil can destroy that, distort that, ruin it in some way, then guess what? We don't have any concept of what our relationship with God is like. If we do not have that understanding, that you realize this was the first sacrament, marriage. When God made Adam and then he made Eve, you know what he did? He performed a wedding. He didn't create the Eucharist. He didn't give them baptism. He didn't give them any. The first sacrament was marriage. Think about that. The primordial sacrament was marriage. Because it was a vivid illustration of God's relationship to his people that we could all relate to. All of us can relate to it because we've all come from a marriage of some kind. It may have been broken, but it was a marriage in some form or another. The union of men and women together produced all of us. Cannot deny that. Okay? That is the primordial sacrament by which we come from. And the devil is doing overtime work in how to destroy that, distort that, to ruin it. And it is the church of Jesus Christ that needs and will stand between now and the end of time to say, this is how a marriage is to be sacramentalized. The union of one man and one woman. For all, till death do you part. Amen?
Amen.
That is what we're talking about.